Hey everyone, have I ever told you about the time of my underwater scuba fight? No? Watch on. Okay, this story takes place in around 2006, off the coast of Vancouver Island in BC, in Canada. And I was learning how to scuba dive. This was my first course in scuba diving. I was taking an open water dive course. And we had finished like the pool sessions, the classroom sessions, and we were in the ocean dives. And in fact, this was the final dive, the certification dive, so that we would get our license to scuba dive on our own. Now, I was doing the course with two other soldiers from my Army Reserve unit at the time. And I'll call one Denman and the other one Wallace. And the three of us were doing it together, and we had a great time. We were buddies both in the Army and outside of the Army, and we had a great time together. But we were also, we like to fool around, and we like to kind of like be physical with one another and things like that. So especially when playing games in terms of like floor hockey or things like that. So we had that kind of friendship, and off we went for this final dive. And the point of this dive was that you had to go down to 50 feet deep in the ocean. And from there, you were to simulate an emergency ascent, an emergency dash up to the surface. So the idea behind it is that you run out of air. You have no more air. And so you take one breath there, and then on one breath with no air coming in, no air hose like this air hose, you just kind of blow bubbles and exhale the whole way up to the surface, as in so to get to safety so that you can breathe again. It can be a tricky thing to do, and not everybody gets on the first time. And so off we went. We had one instructor with us as well. And so it was the four of us. And off we went. We went in this bay, kind of the Noose Bay, back behind the Noose Bay. And we swam out from shore. We got to the right depth. We all went down together. And the instructor started with Wallace first. We all went down to the bottom. With hand signals, she said, okay, you two, as in Denman and myself, stay. I, the instructor, her, she was going to go first with Wallace and see if he could make that 50-foot swim. So off they go. We're like, okay, good. Well, good. This means up in scuba diving, so this means good. So we said, good. Yeah, we'll stay. And so off goes Wallace. Wallace goes up, but he doesn't quite make it. Before 10 or 15 feet before the surface, he has to grab air again. And so he didn't quite make it that time. So she brings him back down and kind of coaches him a little bit. And then they go for another shot. Up they go up to make another shot at it. And again, on the second try, Wallace doesn't make it. Well, like there was snow outside on the ground at this time. So it was pretty cold out. And the ocean there around Vancouver Island is cold really all of the year. So especially compared to many places in the world. So it was cold, and it was cold underwater, especially just kind of hovering still. Denman and I were just kind of hovering at the bottom, keeping ourselves off the bottom just barely, and just kind of like floating, motionless, waiting. And so our body temperature, we were in wetsuits like this, but full sleeves instead. But it was gradually cooling us down. So while Wallace is still like trying to figure this out with the instructor, Denman goes to me. He goes, whoa, right? He speaks through the regulator here. This is the regulator, the kind of air mouthpiece, and this is the air hose back to the tank, the oxygen tank. So he goes like, whoa, to me, gets my attention. He goes, whoa, which is the symbol of I'm cold. So I said, whoa, whoa, like I agree, it is cold. And so then Denman goes to me, whoa, like, hey, whoa, like, do you want to fight? As in, like, maybe fight to keep ourselves warm. Maybe the like movement and activity will warm us up a little bit. And I kind of go, I kind of chuckle and go, Like, no, I'm okay. But Denman didn't really take no for an answer. So when I kind of looked like this. I turn around and Denman just comes straight in. All of a sudden, I feel this tug at me, and he's ripped out. Then he rips out this regulator from me, and it comes out of my mouth. I have no air. It's just kind of like off in the water. I'm like, what? And I'm like, hey. So I have a backup one here, this yellow one, but I use my technique, and I'm kind of like, oh, like frustrated with them. I use my technique. I get my regulator back. I put it back in. Clear it. Like I turn to Denman. I'm like, like, hey, what was that about? And he's going, laughing at me like that. I go, uh-huh, uh-huh. So then I come in at him and we start like pulling at each other's stuff. We're pulling like back and forth, things like that. And then we start like really going at it. And you know how it goes when you're fighting with a friend or with a sibling, maybe? It starts kind of jokes, but one's not as much into it as the other one. And then it gradually turns into like serious. Well, that's what happened here too. So we start getting like angry with each other, and this like tugging and pulling is getting more and more violent with each other. Well, meanwhile, Wallace and the instructor are still like 50 feet away over there and like kind of up, they're up on the surface, completely oblivious to this. They're talking about what he needs to do in order to be able to make the full ascent. And so they're up on the surface, no eyes down. They can't even really see us. We can barely see them up on the surface over there. So we're completely on our own. Now it's just like sand getting kicked up and pebbles and things like that. Whereas it's like a 360-degree fight. We're up over top of each other and down and like grabbing onto things and pulling out whatever can come off. At one point, Denman rips at my mask here and he completely pulls off my mask and it comes off. So now I can't see anything. I got to close my eyes. It's salt water. So I close my eyes and I'm just pulling and stuff all over the place. And I'm like, so finally I let go of him because I can still breathe, but I can't see. And finally we break free like this. And I'm like, oh, and I reach, I'm like blind and looking around, feeling with my hands on the bottom of the ocean. And I find my goggles here and I get them back and I do the process here. And I can already hear Denman laughing at me. I can hear like, as he's laughing at me for he got my goggles off in the process. And I put my goggles back on. They're full with water there. I use the technique to I'm blowing out this water out of my mask. And finally I clear it and get it back. And I'm furious. I look over at Denman and he's like, and it seems like he has won our battle. And then what do I see? I see all of a sudden Denman's tank, his oxygen tank, has somehow, in all this tugging, it starts to go like up like this behind him. And I'm like looking at like him like this, and he's still looking at me. He has no idea what's going on. Everything in front of him is good to go. So he goes, he's still laughing at me. He's just feeling all victorious. And I see, I'm kind of like, looking, and he starts to catch on that something's happening because now I can fully see I've fully disconnected his scuba tank from his vest. I don't know how, it's very difficult to do, but it is now disconnected and it is now floating up towards the surface. And it is only connected to him via its kind of connector hose. So that then catches him here and he feels this tug behind him and he goes, oh. And so his eyes go from kind of like, to this tug and it goes, kind of like, oh. And so now he looks over his shoulder and he sees his air tank pulling him up towards the surface and he starts to get lifted up towards the surface. And he goes, oh, his eyes go wide like this. He goes, oh, oh, and this means there's something wrong. So he goes, there's something wrong behind me. There's something wrong behind me. And I'm like, and I just laugh and laugh at him. And I go, bye-bye, as he goes back up from behind him. He gets pulled all the way up to the surface like this, so that he has to surface. He hits the surface, and he has to explain himself to the instructor who is up there with Wallace at the time, who was not too happy with Denman for what had happened. So I think I eventually got the last laugh in this one. We did eventually come back down. She kept a closer eye on Denman and I after that, and we took our turns. We were successful and we passed the course, but Denman knew not to fight me underwater anymore. Hope you enjoy this one. We'll see you next time.